Well, joining us live via satellite from Paris, France, is Max Keiser, the journalist and broadcaster. Max, the president of the country you're sitting in was talking recently about abandoning the dollar reserve, echoing Iranian politicians. Do you think that'll be discussed in the next few hours at the G20 summit?
Undoubtedly, Afshin. The problem is that the world is suffering a massive credit deflation because on Wall Street they sold to the world toxic bonds, and now the world is suffering for having been bought in these toxic bonds. When Bush said earlier that other countries were suffering, and it shows that this is not an American problem, he spoke disingenuously. The reason the rest of the world has this problem is because they bought these toxic bonds from Wall Street. Moody's and S&P gave them AAA ratings. This is a huge Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme. Hank Paulson, as I said on your program a couple of weeks ago, when the bailout, the 700, soon to become 850 billion bailout was approved, that this was an example of a rogue trader, someone who was acting irresponsibly and outside of the system, and this is exactly what's happened. He did a bait and switch. They approved the money for one thing, now they're going to do it for another thing. AIG has got their third bailout. They've got the auto industry they want to bail out. This is all money that they are concocting in the bowels of Wall Street in a most fraudulent way. Here's Hank Paulson's, this is the word of the day for Hank Paulson. Fraud. This is fraud. If there is a rule of law in America, Hank Paulson should go down to the courthouse, be found guilty for fraud, and dealt with accordingly. And if this were a different century, Afshin, that penalty would be quite harsh, I can assure you.
Well, Barack Obama, president-elect, has decided not to attend the summit, sending, I think, Madeleine Albright. Meanwhile, the deficit, of course, has gone up because of all these billions of dollars spent. But what do you think President-elect Obama is going to do in terms of his appointments? Because, I mean, would your solution be raising interest rates?
Well, first the solution is to recognize that the problem is the fraud that's been committed by Wall Street bankers, principally Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, headed up by Hank Paulson. There has to be a recognition of the fact that this problem is based on mis-selling and wholesale misrepresentation of the products that were sold around the world. That's job number one. Job number two is to recognize that the U.S. dollar is, as a currency, it's analogous to duck feces. It has no intrinsic value whatsoever. It is absolutely worthless. And the world needs to wean themselves off the U.S. dollar. Russia used reserves recently to defend its own currency. That's ludicrously stupid. They should simply come out and say to the world, we're going to go to a gold-backed currency. We're going to divorce ourselves from this pagan, ritualistic, heinous, AIDS-like currency, the U.S. dollar, and we're going to get a decent currency backed by something real. The same thing in the Mideast, the same thing in other countries around the world. They need to get a gold-backed currency. That's what French did. The French government did this in the 1970s. De Gaulle said to America, to you, your currency's junk. They sent a ship to New York. They loaded up all of France's gold onto a ship, and they brought it back to France because they realized that
what you've been talking about, for perhaps years, is now seriously on the table. But of course, wouldn't that plunge the United States economy, the largest economy in the world, into a slump and reduce demand?
The U.S. economy is going into a depression, and no matter what anyone does about it, the entire globe is going to go into a severe depression, to tell you the truth, Afshin. The question is who's going to come out the other side of this with some semblance of an economy still intact. The U.S. is not going to be coming out the other side of this. And if you think about the U.S.'s foreign policy, spurious wars, spurious homicide, spurious concentration camps, if you think about the U.K.'s foreign policy, if it takes an economic depression to throw these countries under the bus, then the world's going to be better off, a much better off place. Certainly the ecology is going to be a better off place if you get rid of the biggest ecological holocaust provoker, the United States of America. So good riddance.
What happens to all the countries that have big dollar reserves? Obviously China, but many others, and all those who have been pegging their currency to the dollar.
China's saying they want to diversify into gold. The Mideast is saying they want to diversify into gold. Russia, if they come to their senses, are going to diversify into gold. Russia's been shopping for gold mines. Gold is the only thing that's real money, Afshin. It's been true since the dawn of civilization. The fiat currency era, the era of market fundamentalism is over. The era of all the neocons is over. They've thrown the America under the bus. The American people need to take matters into their own hands, exercise their Second Amendment right, the right to bear arms, the right to seek justice, the right to throw out tyrants from the high office for high crimes and misdemeanors. It's up to the American people to act. And I say to this American people, Obama's got your back. But it's up to you, the American people, to take the first step. Take the first step against these tyrants, and Obama's got your back.
And just finally, from what you've seen so far of the Obama team, obviously 70 days or so before they take office, what do you think of it so far as regards any preparations to aid the ailing U.S. economy?
Well, unfortunately, the only man in the world that could really save America has been barred from the securities industry. I'm speaking, of course, of the genius, Mike Milken. He's the one who got America into this mess 25 years ago. He's the only one to get America out of this mess. I say to Obama, let Mike Milken back into the securities industry and to figure out how to get your country out of this mess. Other than that, the other appointments that Obama has made, they are troublesome in that they do not appear to be poised to unwind the most nettlesome problem in the world today, of course, the Israeli-Palestine situation. If you look at his administration and his potential cabinet, it seems stacked with politicians who are not sensitive to the rights of the Palestinians, and that may trip Obama up in the early days. I hope not, but looking at the composition of his early picks, they look a little bit I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, I can imagine what word it is. Thank you very much, Max Keiser, because Mike Milken, the junk bond king. So certainly a controversial choice from you there. Viewers can write into us on Press TV at newsroom@presstv.ir to see what they think of what Max Keiser was saying. Thank you very much, as ever, Max.